What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 fantasy football platform. It is the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more and sign up, go to all-22.com. Ray, we have some big news dropping tomorrow. I think that by the time people are listening to this, it will be tomorrow. So I think we can share some of that.
They'll just have to tune in. They'll just have to go to the site. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Go to the site if you want to see what I'm talking about. But yeah, some big changes at all-22.com. Go there and find out what I'm talking about.
Bigger news than anything that's happened this week in the world, country. Like, this is the biggest news item of the week. So stay tuned.
I'm not touching that. I'm not going to fall into that trap. How you been, Ray?
Oh man, I've been pretty good. You know, OTAs. This is when everybody gets hyped for like every player. Like, you know, insert random slot receiver here as a one-handed catch while wearing shorts, and like, you know, the bicep gets accentuated by like a nice photographer or something. Like, oh man, this guy's gonna have a breakout year. You know, year 5 breakout. No, it's probably not gonna happen, but it's optimism galore. Everybody's excited. Everybody looks good in shorts and a jersey. And, you know, just running around playing some touch football before everybody breaks for 2 months and then we go to training camp. But yeah, optimism is abound. And it's a great time of year.
The Packers released a picture of A.J. Dillon running, and like he always looks pretty yoked, but like it was usually just his lower body. This dude looks yoked this year.
Yeah, I think that matters.
Yeah, I wasn't super excited about us re-signing him, especially that we then went and drafted Marshawn Lloyd. But, you know, hey, maybe he did get better. We'll see.
No. 0 shares of A.J. Dillon in this format or any other. And I think it's going to stay that way.
Okay. Well, the big news out of the NFL the last couple of days was the Jayden Waddle deal. He got a massive contract. So I don't know what you think of him. I think we'll get to that today. But do you have his contract up in front of you? Can you tell me about it?
I can tell you about it in 10 seconds. I didn't know I was going to be put on the spot like that. I thought you were going to wax poetic about how great he is, because he is phenomenal. I love Jayden Waddle. I have tons of shares of him in all 22. I think at least 6. So yeah, I got a lot. But anyway, so 3 years, $84.75 million extension with $35.9 million guaranteed for Jayden Waddle. So not quite the $30 million per year number that people are looking at with like CD and Jefferson and the top guys at the position and the contracts that we're looking forward to being announced at some point in the future, but still pretty high up there. What is that math? That's about $28 million per year. If I'm doing some math off the top of my head here. So yeah, just below that $30 million per year threshold for, I think, someone that most people would agree is not a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, but not too far back either. And is definitely in the tier of maybe tier 2 great wide receivers. So at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that puts him at 3rd overall behind A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I got to quote Legit Football on that. So thank you, Legit Football, for the week. The daily emails, those are great. But yeah, so he gets this massive contract. Like you said, he's not really a top 5 receiver in the NFL today, but he is going to be paid like one. It does make me think about the Lamb and Jefferson deals that are going to be upcoming and where those will land. I do think they top 30 by a significant amount. So I'm thinking one of them lands at 33 million. One of them lands closer to 34 million a year. And then I just can't wait for Chase to get paid next year, because I think that's going to be close to 35.
Yeah. And then where does T. Higgins fall in all this? I mean, to me, I would not put him above, again, personal opinion, and we're going to get into all this, but I wouldn't put him above Jayden Waddle. But again, that's not necessarily what dictates the market. It's just timing more so than that. As once you reach a certain talent threshold and are in a certain tier, then it's all about timing of the market as far as who gets paid the most, right? So I guess we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, that's another thing for T. Higgins' camp to point to as far as a number for him to get signed for an extension. So Higgins, a lot of deals in wide receiver market are going to be made here over the next 12 months that, while today it's a top 5 salary, it likely won't be this time next year.
Definitely not. And the Higgins situation is interesting because if he stays with the Bengals, I agree with you. I don't think he gets close to the Jayden Waddle deal. or I shouldn't say he doesn't get close, but it's going to be under the Jaylen Waddle deal. But it's also about desperation of the other teams, right? If a team comes in and trades for him, the Patriots, right? I think the Patriots very well could pay him above the Jaylen Waddle deal because they're so desperate for receiver. And if Higgins is going to agree to go there and sign an extension, they might have to do that, right? It was kind of like what the Giants did with the trade for the Brian Burns, right? It's like, is Brian Burns worth top 5 edge money? Probably not. But how desperate is the team trading for him to lure him to want to sign that deal with that team? So I think that matters. And you're right. It's about timing and context. But yes, today we are going to be doing our rankings of the wide receivers. We've been talking about it as how do we slot the rookies into the bigger picture, which is all of the players at their positions. But it really is a bigger conversation than that, right? We've been doing kind of the top 32 per position, and doing that for receivers probably the hardest position to do, in my opinion. The reason being is because there's probably 70 receivers that could be argued to be in the top 32. Because there are so many different types as well, right? There's the big bodied guys that offer something completely different than the speedy route runner in the slot. And is the speedy route runner in the slot better than the guy that maybe has lower production, but can be on an island on the outside, right? It's so different what they do play in and play out. But that's why we do rely on PFF grading as much as we do, because it gives you context to try to equalize. And then, putting it in all 22 perspective, which guys are getting the snaps to be on the field enough to be relevant for your fantasy team, right? And that's where the conversation really begins, and it's at the top. And I know we haven't really talked about this, Ray. We didn't make a game plan, but the way I did it is I kind of put together some tiers of receivers to talk about. So maybe that's how we start. I'll give you the guys I have in tier 1, and then you tell me if there's anybody else that should be in that tier, and then we'll rank the tier. Okay? Sound good?
Let's do it.
Okay. Tier 1 for me included, but not in this order, right? I'm just throwing out the names, is Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's it.
Okay, so no chance. I assume we're talking again. So this is Dynasty platform. Tyreek Hill, because of age, is outside of that. No Ayuk. He's below that too.
I did not have Ayuk, but again, if you want to argue it, we can argue it.
I mean, Ayuk was the 3rd top scoring receiver on the All-22 platform last year. I think he's a phenomenal receiver. And depending on what happens in San Francisco, if he stays, if he's not traded, if he stays as a focal point of that offense for the next 3 seasons, and his future is solidified there, given that situation, the scheme he's in, I don't see how his performance tails off. So you're looking at a top 5-ish type of receiver for the next 3 years, which is the window we're looking at, right? So to me, I would have him up there. I would put him up there, and I understand he's not the first name that kind of comes to mind with people. They think of him more so as a top 8 to 10-ish receiver, I feel like, is sort of the consensus on Ayuk, but I've always been a lot higher on him than most. The grading bears that out. If the situation becomes stable because he knows where he's going to be, I don't see why that would change at all.
So I think that's the key differentiator. There's actually 2, right? So all of the guys I named so there was 4 guys, right? Lamb, Chase, Marv, and Jefferson, all 25 years old or younger. Ayuk is 26. And then it's just the stability of the situation, right? He does not have a contract with the 49ers that takes him past this year. They do have the franchise tag that they could use. I worry about that because there were so many rumors about them trading him. They did already pay Deebo Samuel, so Deebo is there if nobody else is willing to trade for him. So it's really going to be, do the 49ers want to take less and trade Deebo? So trading Deebo for way less than what they would get for Ayuk, or trading Ayuk and keeping Deebo, even though Deebo is now a little bit older, right? They drafted Ricky Pearsall, so they already have a guy that could step in and replace one of them. That worries me quite a bit.
And you're the risk averse guy. I go for it all. So that's just our nature. But that's the thing. It's an unsettled situation. But it almost goes back to, if you remember the tackle episode we did last week, We talked about Sam Cosmi and how like no one talks about him enough, but he just consistently plays very well and grades really well. That's Ayuk, but on an even higher level, and just never gets the name recognition of the guys that have been doing that as well for the last couple of years. So yeah, I can see why you'd leave him off. But if come opening day, he's got some sort of extension or someone else has gotten traded from the 49ers and we know he's going to stay there, then there's an opportunity there for someone who might be willing to take the chance to buy some shares of Ayuk, maybe at a lower price than he otherwise would be if and when that situation does get sorted out and he stays in San Francisco. So if you like gambling a little bit, there's a potential opportunity there. You're still going to pay a high price for Ayuk, but it's only it may go even higher if he winds up staying in San Francisco for the next few years.
Right. And the other thing that plays into it for me, at least, is what do I consider elite grading and what qualifies to be part of that elite tier? So when you look at Justin Jefferson, every single year has been 90s, right? Like he's touched, I believe, either very high 80s or low 90s every single year of his career. CeeDee Lamb has hit mid 80s or low 90s in 3 of the last 4 years, right? So he's right in that tier as well. When you look at Ayuk, there's 280 grades, but literally 80. And then there's last year, which was 92, which was the elite year. Do we think that he is now just going to repeat that 90 plus success? Or do we think that he's truly that low 80 receiver? Because to me, that makes a very big difference when I'm talking about including him in this tier. You could argue Marv hasn't done anything yet, right?
Well, yeah, that's what someone's probably been screaming for the last 3 minutes is he's a rookie who hasn't done jack except piss off fanatics, which I think we would all love to piss off fanatics as, just sports fans in general. But yeah, that's the other thing that's a pure projection. He's the prototype. He's got the route running. I mean, everybody with eyes can see that this guy is great, but he still hasn't done it. So there's an unknown aspect to each of these two that isn't there with Jefferson or CD.
Right. So why don't we start at the top and then we'll just see because I'll throw at you my tier 2 and you could be like, would I take Ayuk over this player? Right. And then we can see if he's really part of that tier 1 or tier 2. Fine. So who would be your receiver 1 right now?
It would be CD. I think, he doesn't have a contract. Well, neither does Justin Jefferson, but just in general, I mean, he's got the better QB situation as well. I think what we also saw is that early on last year, when you look at the Cowboys specifically, they struggled for the first month and a half-ish of the season on offense. They were still winning some games, right? But they had a stinker against Arizona and such. So then they got blown out by the Niners that we were just talking about. But it basically took the Cowboys about a month or so, month and a half to figure out their offense. And what figured out their offense was, hey, we need to throw the ball to CeeDee Lamb a lot more than we have been. So once that switch flipped, starting with the Chargers game, I think it was a Monday Night Football game. I mean, if you just pull up CeeDee Lamb's player card, maybe I'll present that here. It's just a ton of blue and a little bit of green and then more blue. Basically, once they started throwing to CeeDee Lamb, the offense took off. CeeDee Lamb's performance just went to the moon, and that just kept up for the entirety of the season. I think that's the Cowboys' identity on offense now. They've gotten rid of Michael Gallup. They tried to force him into the offense, and it just wasn't working because of his injury. Brandon Cooks is a clear complementary piece. They have the tight end Ferguson as well as kind of a complementary piece, but everything seems to flow through CeeDee Lamb on offense now, and I'm just not sure how much the Vikings are going to be able to do that with their quarterback situation, whether it's Darnold or JJ McCarthy. You have someone like Dak Prescott who's going to feed his top target, is a top 12 at the very least. You can argue otherwise, how far up you want to put him. But when it comes to a top quarterback in the league, Dak Prescott's in that top 12, whereas it's much more of an unknown in Minnesota. So I think the quarterback situation and the fact that the offense is committed to CeeDee Lamb getting more targets puts Lamb above Jefferson for me. I probably can't spend that much time arguing every single 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4, but that's why I would have Lamb over Jefferson.
Got it. Yeah, I had Lamb over Jefferson as well. I think Lamb, for all the reasons you said, has been great. The upward trajectory. So if you were to share your screen, like you said you were, that'd be great. The upward swing of his career is very attractive and very enticing for a fantasy owner. Where you're right, Justin Jefferson now with an unknown at quarterback could be different. And I think the other thing is, I don't necessarily see a situation where the Cowboys don't get a contract done with Lamb, but I could see Justin Jefferson getting really frustrated with the way that that situation is going, where the quarterback isn't maybe the guy he wanted, and he's unhappy with the handling of the offense. And he says, I don't want to be here. Right. Like I'm not saying that's going to happen. I will say, right, like Minnesota on the player rankings of like best places to be, they usually get a really high score in terms of the way they treat their players. So Jefferson could value that. I don't know. But I think from my perspective, yeah, Lamb is he's definitely the guy for me at 1 at this point. I think the conversation at 2 gets a lot more interesting between Jefferson and Chase. And it's not because Chase is as good as Jefferson has been. He isn't, right? Right now we're looking at Jefferson. It's all high 90 grading. Chase hasn't been that yet, right? He's mid 80s, he's mid to low 80s, and it is going up and it is getting better every year, but he hasn't hit that elite tier of having a 90 graded season yet. But to your point, right, and the points that we're saying, Jamar Chase, he's with Joe Burrow, and that situation is probably not going to change for a long time. They've made it very clear that they value Chase much more than they value Higgins. They're going to get Chase's deal done, and they're going to pair him with Burrow for the foreseeable future. Again, I don't know what that looks like for Justin Jefferson. I can't tell you what that looks like for him. But is Justin Jefferson situation proof, right? I think that's the question that we need to decide. And if he is situation proof, I think Jefferson is the clear number 2, Chase probably the number 3, but curious how you feel about that.
Yeah, but they're both situation proof, I guess. It's tough because I want to say Jamar Chase, but when you compare his performance history, which is fantastic, it is, there's no doubt about it. But when you compare that performance history to Jefferson's is clearly better. And yes, I think Jefferson is situation proof. So while there may be a dip because there just is going to be a drop off from Kirk Cousins to either Darnold or McCarthy, how much is that going to impact Jefferson's performance itself? I mean, he really realistically has about a 10-point buffer already between him and Chase. So I think I have to go with Jefferson, but it's really close. I just have a harder time. I have a harder time demoting Jefferson than I do Chase. I think that's just the tiebreaker. It's just one of those gut feel things. But again, you can't go wrong. It's not like if both of these guys are available and I'm one pick away, and I'm not worried about getting sniped for one and not the other. I'm not disappointed to have either of these guys, but I would put Jefferson at 2 and Chase at 3.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I think that's fair. I don't think you downgrade Jefferson until you see a reason why. And he really hasn't given you one. I will say one thing that I love about Jefferson and Chase is you don't really hear much about, and Lamb for that matter, right? Like you don't hear much from them. They're not on social media crying and complaining. They go to work every day. And I think I really do value that. I think that's important. So I did have Marv in my tier 1, but maybe I throw the guys in tier 2 out there and we can talk about if Marv should be above them or not. Sound good?
Please do.
Okay. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Jayden Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, and then Marv would, to me, be that next tier of receiver.
Yeah, I think I take Marv over every single one of them. The talking point or the question I have is, it's not far-fetched. It really isn't to have had Malik Nabers as your wide receiver 1 in this past class. It wasn't crazy. A lot of people had that opinion, and it wasn't wrong. It's something, at least me, I went back and forth on quite a bit throughout the draft process. I think ultimately Marv was safer, if you will, but they were right there. And if you want to say the situation is that much of a differentiator in Marv's favor, okay, cool. I mean, that's one argument. The other is, again, what I always go back to is I'm not drafting a rookie for what they're going to do for me in their rookie season. So, what happens if 24 months from now, the Giants have a first round pick at wide receiver? Their offensive line has gotten incrementally better. Incrementally better. 24 months from now, their situations could be pretty much on an even plane. So is it crazy then to have Nabers in that same tier? I don't know. I think I have a tough time justifying having them in completely different tiers overall. It's very tough for me. So yeah, if I'm on the clock right now and they're both available and the top 3 receivers are gone, maybe I'm in the top of round 2 or something like that. I'm picking 16th overall or something. And I have my franchise quarterback and I'm looking for a young wide receiver or a franchise wide receiver. I am going to take Harrison over Nabers given the situation and what it is today. But I don't know, man. If Harrison's the bottom of tier 1, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with Nabers being tier 3. Just by that logic.
Yeah, I think the situation definitely scared me a little just because there is so much unknown at quarterback. Besides Drew Lock, who's going to make the Hall of Fame now.
Right.
It concerns. I mean, the differentiator to me too is body type and the way that they typically just play the position, right? Like I think Marv plays. I mean, he could do anything. He's 6'4", and he can do big receiver stuff. He could do little receiver stuff. He could do slot receiver stuff. Nabers might be a little bit more limited in terms of all around what he can do. Obviously, like. It also might depend on what you think of Kyler. And I think Kyler's a good quarterback. Like, I don't think he's this trash going to be replaced quarterback that the team thinks that they can't win with. Whereas even if you have Daniel Jones gone and you bring in some rookie next year, right? Say it's Shador or Quinn Ewers, right? Like one of those guys. I don't think they're Kyler Murray tier of prospect, right? Like, I don't think they're that level of good. So, for me, even if the Giants draft a quarterback next year, I don't think they can get one in the same tier as Kyler. And am I really comfortable waiting 2 years to find out who's throwing my guy the ball, right? So I think that's a big differentiator too. And then in terms of including him in tier 2, I think that conversation gets really hard. And the reason being, right, because I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Pull up his card real quick, right? I think we still kind of sit on the fact that he was a 4th-round draft pick and wasn't that highly rated in college. But look at those last 2 years, 90.7, 90.6. That's incredible production, right? And incredible grading for St. Brown. He's also in a fantastic situation where every piece around him is basically locked up for the foreseeable future. He's going to play with the same guys for a while. I really like that. You look at A.J. Brown, right? And I understand A.J. Brown is now 27 years old, I think, or really close to being 27 years old. But that grading is phenomenal, right? Like, I just have a really hard time saying that, a rookie that's in a bad situation who's smaller I'm going to take him over guys like this. But maybe I will, because 7 years of age difference is a big deal.
And that's a physical 27 for AJ Brown too. There's some,
right.
He doesn't play like some of these other guys. That there's some wear and tear there.
Okay. So I think, so the other guy that I held out of tier 2, but is at the top of my tier 3 is Puka. And if I'm putting Malik Nabers,
you're going to get some fire about that one.
If I'm putting Nabers in my tier 2, am I really getting away with not putting Puka in my tier 2?
There's probably about 15 guys who deserve to be in tier 2 for the wide receiver position group in the NFL. I think that's the state of the league. You could name 15 guys and go, well, why not this guy? Look at everything he's done. Look at his profile. Look at, his situation, whatever the case is. And you can make that argument solidly so. It's just, how big do you want your tier 2 to be? Because I could also look at, some might say Garrett Wilson, and then others would counter with, well, what's that going to look like in 16 months, right? But, this is a guy who slogged through Zach Wilson for the start of his career, put up a fantastic year and then a good year thereafter. We'll see what he does with Aaron Rodgers, and then, but what happens after that? I don't know. But he's acquitted himself well too. So, how big do you want your tier 2 to be? I think is the question, more so than anything else, because otherwise you could pick out a name and argue versus another name, and this podcast episode will be like 10 hours long, because that's just the state of wide receiver in the NFL today.
Right. And so I didn't say like, I want my tier 1 to be 5 people. I want my tier 2 to be 5 people. I kind of thought about it as, where am I, like, which guys am I drafting in a group before I go look at a different position? Right. Like, and to me, it's okay. It's Lamb, Chase, Jefferson, and maybe Marv. And I'm good with any of those guys pretty early on in maybe round 2. And then it's like, okay, but if I don't get any of those guys, I'm probably going to a different position before I come back to receiver, right? And that's where I get into the St. Browns, the AJ Browns, the Waddle, the Ayuk, the Puka, and the Nabers. I'm okay including all 6 of those guys if that's what we want to do, because we really do need to just start ranking them, right? Like, who's the next guy? Is it Marv? Are we comfortable saying
yes?
Because personally, 4. I'm taking Marv over any of those guys.
He's 4. Yeah, he's 4.
Okay, so Marv is 4. Who's 5? You were kind of arguing Nabers.
Well, just the logic behind it, because I think he's close. But after Marv at 4, if I'm looking at these names here with, like, again, AJ Brown, St. Brown, I mean, I talked about it before. Probably Ayuk. I'm that high on Ayuk, but then this is the problem. Then I look and go, well, what about Waddle? Like, why not Waddle? He grades fantastically as well. He just got locked up long term. Why not Waddle? He's in a great situation too. And depending on how much longer Tyreek Hill has left, Waddle is going to be the primary target in that offense moving forward. And he can step up and be that. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, can you go wrong with either of those guys? Yeah. I don't know.
Open up Waddle. Because I think the conversation happens between, in my opinion, I think the next guy is probably St. Brown.
It's just improvement for Waddle.
It's improvement. You're right. But if you look at this and compare it to St. Brown has just been great, right? Like, there wasn't need for improvement. It's just been really good. He's also a year younger than Waddle, right? So to me, it's probably St. Brown, just because the high level of plays there. He's still 24 years old. The situation is great. How do you argue against that for either Waddle or Ayuk, who really have only had 1 year of that 90 grading and are both older than St. Brown is?
Because I could say something that's going to piss a lot of people off, and maybe get a bunch of hate. But, like, what happens when Ben Johnson takes a head coaching job next year, the offensive coordinator for the Lions? I'm sorry, that system is fantastic. He does fantastic designs in the run and pass game. What happens when he's gone? Is that something that I think that's going to be a big adjustment? That's just me. I'm not calling St. Brown a system receiver. I'm just saying, once he loses Ben Johnson, is he a top 7 type of guy, or is he more of a top 15 receiver? I could see the latter. I think Ben Johnson is that good at what he does and has been that good at what he does. I think it was an absolute coup for the Lions to keep him for another year. Mm-hmm. So that's just me. I know
we don't know where Ayuk is going to be. We don't know
where Ayuk is going to be, but I don't think the Dolphins are dumb enough to get rid of McDaniel. So I know Waddle's going to be in that situation.
But is Tua going to be there?
To me, McDaniel is more important of a cog than Tua is. I know.
Oh, I agree.
Thing I said in 90 seconds that people might hate, but
no, I agree with that. I actually agree with that take, but it doesn't mean that he's not important, right? Because if you replace Tua with a guy that doesn't know how to, with the Trey Lance, right? And you're saying, oh, we're going to go get Trey Lance, right? Like, in the draft, we're going to get a guy that can do everything and be a better football player and open things up. It's like, no, Tua is so good at running an offense. And even if he doesn't have the big arm and the big ability, like a guy like that has, that big of a prospect, Tua is really important for running that show. That's why Waddle and Tyreek Hill get to eat every day, right? Like, I understand they're both great receivers, but Tua does things that allows them to be successful as well, that I don't think anybody can just step in and do. They haven't paid Tua, right? And that's where the situation stuff gets important.
It's tricky.
And also, like, is the line situation just so enticing that they're going to be able to go get another really good offensive coordinator because the situation's so good?
I think the driver of that situation is Ben Johnson. I mean, I don't think it's some phenomenal like, and again, could be preconceived notions that just die hard, but I don't. Oh, I gotta be in that offense with Jared Goff leading the show here. And that's the best step for my career. I mean, it's
No.
not a bad situation by any means. You got Gibbs, you got a fantastic O-line. I get it. I
O-line.
get it.
You have Penny Sewell, you have Frank Ragnow. The
Sure.
offensive line is very good, right? And on top of that, you have a stud number one receiver. You have a stud running back. Yes, the quarterback is probably the definition of league average, but it's a really good offensive situation for the guy that wants to become the next Ben Johnson to step into and say, okay, in 2-3 years, I'm going to be a head coach in the NFL because
But
I
you
know I can
have
go
to
to this
be the
situation
next Ben
successful.
Johnson. You have to be the next
Sure.
Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson's the glue. You have to be the glue. If you're just a guy, if you're a league average play caller and you run into this, that's when Amon-Ra St. Brown goes from top 7 to top 15 for me.
So again, I can't fathom taking Ayuk.
Well, think of it systemically, right? Think of it systematically.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the system that McDaniel is a disciple of and from go from Jimmy G to Brock Purdy at both. I mean, Brock Purdy probably is an improvement, but just as it relates to the skill production and the offensive, yards manufactured and such, it didn't miss a beat with Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback just stepping in right away. You lost a quarterback who was in the Super Bowl, right? And you just kept humming with Mr. Irrelevant. I think Tua is better than what San Francisco transitioned away from, but I think those principles apply. And you have Waddle at 25 years old with a long-term deal. And everybody else on that offense is an absolute track star, like Mostert, Achane, Wright. I don't know. That's what puts, and I get it. I might be on that island alone. And it's not that I'm saying that it's a bad move to go with the others. I just like that upside there. And I do think something gets done with Tua anyway. I think that's probably less of a risk than even Ayuk getting traded, let's say.
So let's just, for argument's sake, talk about the other two guys that we wanted to include in this tier 2 that I initially didn't say, which is Puka and Nabers, right? So Puka is also in one of those systems, right? The Shanahan systems under Sean McVay. It's an incredible offense that they could just scheme any receiver to the moon, right? Puka's the next guy in that system, and he stepped in year 1 with an 87.9 PFF grade. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. Like, he plays a really strong receiver, kind of has a little bit of that Ayuk play to him where even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's doing important things for the football team, blocking down the field, blocking on running plays, right? Like, he does all of that. And at just 23 years old, already showing us that he can do it at that high level, which is, again, 87.9 for just context. Jamar Chase has not had a season that high yet, right? Yeah. Puka had a really special year. Nabers then, again, just he's 20. He's 20 years old. And no, he hasn't stepped in and shown us he can do this. But watching his tape, it's almost impossible for you to see a way that he's failing in the NFL. What do we do with that?
They're both tier 2 for me.
Yeah, but which
is first into Puka? I think you got to go Puka first,
right?
Because it's like
Puka over some of the guys we were just talking about, right? Because we're talking about age. We're talking about a 23-year-old with an 88 PFF grade over 27-year-old AJ Brown.
What happens when Stafford's gone?
You just made this long argument about how
I think McVay is a step below those other guys.
What?
Yes, I think he's a step above almost everybody else. I think he's a step below guys like Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel.
I think he might be the best of the bunch.
Okay.
I think he might be the best of the bunch. I think
he couldn't do with Jared Goff what Ben Johnson just did with Jared Goff.
Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then what?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's what we are disconnected on. Do I think that he's the best offensive mind of the group? No, I think that Shanahan, McDaniels are better offensive minds. But in terms of being a head coach, which he is, he is the best of the bunch, maybe besides Shanahan. I think him and Shanahan, in my eyes, are pretty close. But to me, it's like, no, you don't get to make that argument about
Sure,
Tua leaving, and then finding Mr. Irrelevant to step in. But I can't make that same argument for the receiver that's 2 years younger. No, absolutely not.
I get the 2 years younger thing, and that's where it's like, well, gee, then how do I not put him above someone like Waddle? But I don't know. I think there's a difference there. But I agree. I mean, you look at it and you go, well, how can you? The logic doesn't bear out to not put Puka above someone like Waddle when you consider those factors. So,
right.
Yeah, I would put. I guess I'd put Puka Nacua above him.
Is he 5? So we are 35 minutes into this podcast.
That's the point of wide receiver in the NFL. It's like, bro, you can't. You will be here all day trying to numerically get these guys. So let's do this.
Here all day if I need to be here all day.
All right, Puka's 5. Puka's 5.
Puka is 5.
And then I would go Waddle 6, Ayuk 7.
Go back. No. Go to Waddle real quick. I'm not just like agreeing to that because.
What do you mean? Yeah, you're not just agreeing to that. Look at it. This is just going up. It's just going up.
It's good, but look at St. Brown, and St. Brown's younger.
Yeah, but St. Brown is going to have a different offensive coordinator in 10 months. And that to me matters.
Like, come on.
It matters to me.
Let's hold there. So we're saying those are 6 and 7. If those are 6 and 7 in some order, I think Nabers has to be after that because the age gap between Nabers, Brown, and Ayuk is so big that, and if we think he's that level of elite prospect, I think he needs to be above Brown and Ayuk. He's literally 6 years younger than both of them.
Is there some off-field stuff to worry about there, though? Like some of the whispers pre-draft, or do you think that's all nonsense?
I don't think it's nonsense. I think the whispers are real. I mean, I think it's real because he went into interviews and was bashing the Giants. Like, he basically was like, yeah, I don't want to play there. And then he's talking bad about Daniel Jones. And like, I think that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about Chase and Jefferson and Lamb, right? Like, those guys don't do that. Granted, they haven't had to because they're in great situations, but
publicly they don't do that. I'm not so sure Jefferson's maybe saying some nice things behind closed, which if you're gonna not say nice things, do it behind the closed doors, I guess. So good on Jefferson for that. I'm not sure he's thrilled with the moves that the Vikings have made recently this past year.
Agreed.
I think there's some whispers of that. So, but then there's Ayuk.
So, okay. I feel like I want to take, so Ray and I and Bobby, all 22 Bobby, we have this thing where I took it from a show or a movie. I don't remember what, but it's essentially you say 100 push-ups, right? Or 1,000 push-ups. 1,000 push-ups. It's essentially saying I'm willing to bet 1,000 push-ups that I'm right so that we just agree, and Ray has to respect it. He has to say, okay, you're betting the 1,000 push-ups. We get your way. But then in 2 years, if Amon-Ra sucks, and Waddle's to the moon.
He's not going to suck. He's going to be at least top 15 or 12.
If Waddle has more all 22 points and, in back-to-back years over St. Brown, I have to do 1,000 push-ups. I think I'm willing to do that for this.
Okay. I'm not, because what you said earlier about, hey, once a certain level of receiver is gone, then I'm looking elsewhere in my startup draft. All of these guys fall into that same group to where once they're all gone, I'll look elsewhere. But if I end up with any of them, I'm cool.
Okay. So I'm writing it in after Puka at 6 now is St. Brown. You wanted Waddle at 7.
Yeah, I put Waddle there, I guess, at 7. No, yeah, Waddle at 7. Yeah.
So Waddle's going to be at 7. And then I was saying I think it should be Nabers at 8 before Ayuk and AJ Brown, but I think it's those 3 next.
Let's do that order. And I think the only thing with Brown is, again, it's like people forget he had a bit of an injury history. Like, he gets banged up quite a bit. And yeah, he grades phenomenal when he is on the field. And last year he played essentially the whole year. So you didn't see that last year, but people forget that prior to that, he was always kind of missing some time. And like last year, he kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of the year, like the whole Eagles offense did. So again, he's a phenomenal player. He's going to be phenomenal, but I think that's what we'll put him at, whatever number this is now, 9. Still tier 2, but in the back half of the top 10, or rather than, right smack dab in the middle.
Okay, so scroll so that those guys disappear a little bit from the screen and we can see the next group of guys. I have my tier 3 with a few guys that, like, in my mind, there is a big step back now. Like, that top 10 is pretty awesome, right? And now we're taking a little bit of a step back. We're either getting older guys that are really great, or we're taking gambles on younger guys that we think will be great. But I don't know if anybody in this next tier will ever be in the conversation of top 3 to 4 players in the NFL, right? So I think that's kind of where my mind goes. And with that tier 3, I think it's 23-year-old Drake London. I think it's Garrett Wilson, 24, Devonta Smith, 25. I think Chris Olave might even enter that situation. DJ Moore, you just had him open. Like, to me, those are the next guys. Curious if you have anybody else, but I'll just say it again. London, Garrett Wilson, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, if I go down the list of names here, I would not put T. Higgins in that tier. I would not put Stephon Diggs in that tier solely due to age. I would not put Brian Thomas Jr. in there. Terry McLaurin, I kind of considered, but that's also, he's getting a bit up there. He's going to be 29 and just rookie quarterback. I got to see how that shakes out. So I would not put him in that tier 3 either. We kind of touched on Samuel, I think, a little bit, but that's another one. Situation is still kind of a little bit unsettled. He's, he's fine if he's in that offense, but he's one where if he goes somewhere else, I am clearly knocking him down a peg. Pickens is too much of a wild card for me. So I think those are the names. I don't see anyone else I would want to put in there. Pittman, not quite there yet. I think those are the names.
Okay.
So I go back up here a bit. Yep.
I had my order, and we could, again, debate this and figure it out, but my order was Drake London at 11. Garrett Wilson would be next at 12. Devonta Smith next at 13. Chris Olave at 14, and DJ Moore at 15. So, and maybe just start by opening Drake London's card so we can take a look at that. Again, he's not even 23 yet. He will be, but 83 rookie season, 79 basically last year, gets a significant upgrade at quarterback. And then again, they draft a quarterback. So you have to think he has stability. The offensive line is great. The running back's great. They have some other weapons there. Like, to me, there really is this really high floor for London, even if the ceiling, again, I don't see him ever entering that top 5 conversation. I think the floor for him is pretty high.
Yeah, I think the floor is high, and I think there's a possibility 12 months from now, this time next year, he's either at the top of this tier or has entered tier 2.
Right.
Because again, we're finally seeing him with not just a real quarterback, but an offensive play caller that doesn't stay up late at night designing stuff for Jonnu Smith. So I think, he might be tops of this tier for me too.
Okay. I'm just going to write it in because honestly, I think that's an easy one. Garrett Wilson was the hard one for me just because I think talent alone, he's incredible. I don't like to see that he wasn't situation proof. He got downgraded at quarterback significantly, and it showed. I still think he's an incredible player. I think that offense got so much better. But to your point, 12 months from now, the offense might look completely different, right? Both of their tackles could be gone. Mike Williams would be gone. Aaron Rodgers would be gone, right? And then all of a sudden that offense, again, it's like, it got inflated. And while I love what they did for this year, it's going to take a big step back, potentially the year after, maybe the year after that. So I don't really know what to think of his outlook, especially against a guy like Devonta Smith or Chris Olave, who the situations are pretty stable. Even if we don't love Chris Olave's situation, Devonta Smith, I mean, he's just Mr. Consistent, right? He's Mr. Consistent, grades extremely well, solid all around, can really do anything they ask him to. Last year, he mossed people more than I saw him, do that in his entire career previously. So he's just I think he is growing too. And it's pretty incredible considering he's a 175-pound receiver. So I really go back and forth with Wilson, Smith, and Olave. So I might let you make this decision. Maybe.
I think I have to put Smith on top just because of the stability of his situation. We don't know who's going to, I think Wilson we've seen his floor, and which is still very good and good enough to be in tier 3 of wide receivers in the NFL, which is very, very good. But the thing is, we know that even if we see his ceiling or close to it this coming year, that's not going to last for in 2026 at the latest, right? And maybe Rodgers is back in 2025 as well, but we know that's not a 3+ year thing. So how long are we having Wilson's peak before they go back to rebuild with either a rookie quarterback or whatever, if they're even in position to draft one, if they have success as a team? Is he just back in quarterback purgatory after Rodgers is gone, and we start seeing this again, where it's like we see how talented he is, but he is completely hamstrung by everything else around him. So I can't put him above someone like Devontae Smith, where I don't think we see that situation getting any better, right? Their best players are getting a bit older on the offensive line. They now have more money locked up in Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They've gotten Saquon, so maybe that's a bit of an improvement from last season. But there's the situation sort of is what it is, but at least we know what it is for the next 2, 3, 4 years from here on out. I think that stability puts Smith at 1. And then it's just,
yeah. What about Olave and
I don't
DJ
think
Moore?
that's, yeah. I don't think that situation gets much better. I think it's, let's just do some math here. All right. I'm just going to say Olave is an 82.5 type receiver here. And then we're just going to average.
That's pretty good, right? Like,
yeah, it looks like he averages better than Wilson here. So I'm just going to have to put Olave above Wilson then, because, well, that's better consistency than I would.
What great content, dude.
Yeah.
You could pull up DJ Moore too, because DJ Moore was really hard for me. Just because, again, last year was phenomenal with a pretty bad quarterback. The situation's getting significantly better. But he is 3 years older than both of those other guys. You know, at what point does this start to teeter? And are we buying into him being a 90 receiver as opposed to what he had been 4 years in a row before that, which is a mid to high 70s receiver?
So I'll make the case for DJ Moore above even Garrett Wilson. I'm not sure. Possibly above Olave too. Well, shoot, you know what? I'll just make the case for DJ Moore above all 3 of those names we just mentioned. We talk about a 3-year window. All right. His age 27, 28, and 29 seasons. There's no drop off anticipated there. After that, maybe you expect a drop off, but if we're talking 3-year window, he just got a significant upgrade at quarterback and other weapons around him. So, I mean, he has a little bit more room to breathe. Why the heck not? Look at what he just did with Justin Fields this past year once he got assimilated into Chicago. So, yeah, why not DJ Moore? Why not DJ Moore at all? He got a better quarterback, and he was knocking on the door of 90. Right. And he's never had a good quarterback his whole career. Now he finally has one, and it's a quarterback in a good situation with other weapons, options on offense, whatever you want to put it, that can take some focus from the defense, but also complement him very well. Odunze is kind of like a primary deep threat, downfield, go up and get it type of player. Keenan Allen, who can work the shallow and middle of the fields there and kind of pepper defenses that way, and allows DJ Moore to be a second and third level type of threat while also being a yak receiver. I mean, why the hell not? Everything just got better for the next 3 years.
Yeah. So him above Smith.
Moore, Smith, Olave, Wilson. That's my ranking of the 4.
Moore.
I just convinced
Smith,
myself.
Olave, Wilson. I'm on board for that. I think that makes sense. And I always talk about that 3-year window. I think that 3-year window is what you need to look at when you're doing this exercise, right? We don't know what's going to happen after that.
How many people are screaming about Nico Collins now?
Okay. I mean, I do have him in my tier 4, but I can't just bet on a guy after 1 year. And he's 25. It's not like we're like, oh, this is 23-year-old guy who, finally had his big year. It's like, no, he had his big year at 24, which is fine. It's fine, but it's like,
it's fine.
he wasn't very good before that. So what are we going to do?
Who was throwing him the ball? I don't even remember the guy's name. He had the long neck. The quarterback with Davis Mills.
Davis Mills, dude. He's awesome.
He gets a real quarterback, a real coordinator, and now look.
I also don't know how much production could be there for him now. Like, it did get harder, right? Like, Diggs is there. Tank Dell's going to be healthy again. So is there just kind of like more mouths to eat? And he in my opinion, probably is number 3 of that group in terms of like who I'd want to get the football, even though he did amazing last year.
Wow.
I love Tank Dell, dude. But in all 22,
He just got shot.
Tank Dell got shot?
Yeah. Didn't he?
No. Did he?
Yeah, like a couple of weeks ago, not like 10 minutes ago. I mean, like, yeah, he's like back running around, but like I'm just saying, like, there's a guy coming off of an injury and then got shot.
Oh, okay. Well, shoot, I missed that. Sorry, Tank Dell. Hope you're all right.
Yeah.
So
I think he is all right.
Let me throw out the next tier before we just start talking about Nico Collins. Okay. So it's George Pickens is in there, DK Metcalf, Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Rome, Michael Pittman.
I think I put man.
Open up
DK,
and then we'll open up Higgins. DK has been really consistent, right? And that's kind of the conversation. It's, are you buying into Nico Collins' big year, even though now they went and got Stephon Diggs? Or do you just trust that DK Metcalf is what he is and it's really good?
You got to have Nico above him because he's got CJ Stroud and DK's got Geno Smith for maybe 2 years.
Okay. And then we're having, where's T. Higgins? Where's Rome, right? Where's Rome in that? Is Rome in this tier? Or do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Rome is in this tier. I think these guys are bunched up very close together, but honestly, I don't think I'm done with the argument that Nico Collins should be in tier 3. I'm still going to argue that.
You think? I don't think that he's above.
He's got Stroud now.
Chris Olave or Devonta Smith.
Is it outlandish for him to be above Chris Olave? Is it? He's in a better situation. He's got a better quarterback for the long term.
Olave's the number 1, though.
What? Okay, but how long is Diggs going to be in Houston anyway? Because I think regardless, Nico's that prototype on the outside.
1 year.
Yeah.
It's a good argument. It is.
That's all I do is make good arguments.
Okay. Relax. So that would mean that he's above Garrett Wilson too, because you had Olave above Garrett Wilson. And that's where I get like, we sure? You sure about that?
Maybe. Why not above Garrett Wilson? He's got CJ Stroud. He's 1 year older, but he's got not a much better, well, long term, he's got stability at quarterback.
I think so. My vote would be him at 16 right after both of those guys. If you want to argue that he's above both of them, I'm willing to give you it.
I don't know what number we're on. I just think he has to at least be in that tier. Let's just say he's in that tier. Okay. You can put him at the bottom of the tier and then say he's still number whatever. But right. I think he has to be in that tier and not in the tier with guys like Metcalf and Higgins.
It just was like a body type thing. It just worked out because their bodies were all like kind of similar, but it's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
He's in tier 3 and he will be number 16. So now the next tier, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Rome, Pittman, and Pickens. Pickens is interesting too, because I mean, we just looked at DK Metcalf and the success that he had early in his career. Pickens has been really good. He definitely gets an upgraded quarterback, even if you don't think Russell Wilson is that dude anymore. Mm-hmm. And he loves throwing the ball to guys like Pickens.
I'm just trying to look and find names that we should be maybe including in here that we're not. But okay.
I mean, if there's somebody, shout him out. But right, so like he's already got a 75 grade in there as a 22. He was 22, had a 75.3 grade. Quarterback situation gets better. Offensive line gets better.
Which is such a wild card.
He is, and he's a weird dude. Makes it hard.
Yeah, it's just hard. That's what it is. It's just hard. I mean, are people screaming at us? Probably not. They're probably not yet screaming, but like, I mean, McLaurin. Even with the concerns we might have at quarterback as it relates to McLaurin,
open him up.
I mean, he had Sam Howell. So, I mean, what are we really talking about here?
Right. But his rookie year really did spotlight the rest of his career. It was kind of like, this is a guy that we need to be talking about. He was great. But since then, right, 4 years in a row.
It's very good. But
it's very good. But it's not DK Metcalf good. It's not. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think so. I don't think he's in that conversation yet.
Okay. I mean, are people yelling about Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr. yet? Like someone might be saying Worthy with Mahomes, the space and the speed, and
I would. I just didn't think anybody else would, but I would. I would honestly have him in like competition with guys like Olave and Garrett Wilson.
So don't be a coward. Put him in at least tier 4.
Okay. Worthy's in tier 4. We're throwing him in.
All right. So we got Rome, Worthy, Higgins,
Metcalf and Pickens and Pittman. It sounded like a Dr. Seuss rhyme.
Yeah.
Good tier. Open up Pittman. I don't even know where he is, but open up Pittman if you could find him.
I don't know where he is either. I think there he is.
I guess he is. He's a lot older than I thought he was. He's almost 27. He's going to be 27. I still think of him as like a young guy. Never hit 80. So, yeah, I think he's probably at the bottom of this tier if he's even in this tier.
I put him at the bottom of this tier because there's people nipping at his heels, and I don't think they would go in this tier. But I just think in general, our all-22 rankings, I don't even think he's top 32, for example. But Josh Downs, I think he's a heck of a player. I think he may command more targets. And then Adonai Mitchell, also there. I think what they do is just at the very least, they sap whatever ability there was for Pittman to have those potential like game-breaking type of weeks that could win you an all-22 week, for example, when he might bust out for 165 yards or something and 2 touchdowns on 7 catches or something. I'm not sure he's going to be that much of a focal point in the offense anymore now that they can kind of spread the ball around a bit. They still have the run game too. I think the game-breaking ceiling isn't there with Pittman, so I think he's at the bottom of this tier. And potentially this time next year, if Mitchell progresses, he might fall to the, Pittman himself might fall to the tier below. Just my thought.
All right, I'm good with that. I'll have him at the bottom of this tier. But, okay, so I think the guys that are left, it's Pickens, Metcalf, Higgins, and Rome. So down to 4.
There's an unknown with every single one of these.
I mean, I think Metcalf is not an unknown. He's been super consistent. He is what he is, which is a very, very talented receiver that has a very limited skill set. But it's valuable, right? And the quarterback situation is the same as it's been a couple of years now. He's been good.
This is Gino. I guess. Yeah, he'd be the first name here. That's fine. Yeah. I agree.
Metcalf at 17. Then I think to me, it's probably Rome over Higgins and over Pickens. I think if I had to rank them, it's Rome, Pickens, Higgins.
Rome, Pickens. Yeah, he's doing the wide receiver thing where they find some quote and sound all deep, and then they put it on social media because someone else got paid. Yeah, he's making some waves. He's not long for Cincinnati, and who knows where he lands.
And I don't know if he's really a guy that can eat as a number 1.
I agree.
Like, I think it worked really saying that he did play well when Chase wasn't on the field, but I think he's done extremely well as the 2 to Chase.
I think that's his ideal role, is like he could be a top 25 receiver in the league who works best when there's just another alpha target across from him. Right. I don't think that's denigrating at all. So I would agree with that.
Okay. So it's Metcalf, it's Rome, it's Pickens and Higgins. And then we said it's Pittman after that. So we're actually down to 22 already. So we only have,
just to be sure, then you don't have Worthy above any of these guys.
Oh, I sure as heck do.
And there you go.
I think landing spot put him above Rome for me. I think it puts him above Garrett Wilson. I think it puts him above Chris Olave.
Wow, put him above Rome Odunze.
I think it puts him above Devonta Smith.
All right, I gotta wheel you in a little bit here. I
think I would have him at 13 behind DJ Moore.
Okay, we're not gonna do that. I would put him. Let's slide him right behind DK for right now. He still has to do it.
So you're putting him above Rome then?
Let's put him right behind Rome.
Coward. Okay.
Worthy. I think Rome is a lot safer. Because there's no real red flags with Rome. You don't.
I don't. There's 2 receivers on the roster that are better than him right now.
Yeah, right now. But Keenan Allen's probably going to be there just a year.
I don't know that. I mean, I don't think Keenan has really showed signs of slowing down, even though I agree it's going to happen soon. But I think
He's
he's
kind of
there
hurt.
for I think he's there for a year or two. Um, I don't know, man.
I have no
I
ideas
think
on this list.
Worthy's you're the guy that doesn't like Hollywood Brown. Are you really sure that?
Worthy's a lot better than Hollywood Brown,
Okay, so he's
but
the
he's still a
one.
rookie.
So is Rome.
I know, but I'm not drafting them for what they're going to do for me my rookie year. I'm drafting them for what they're going to do once Keenan Allen's no longer on the Bears and Caleb Williams has football experience under his belt. And after 1 year, he's become already the Bears single season touchdown record holder as a quarterback. And now him and Moore are working off of each other and they're perfect complements and everything is just humming along. That's what I'm drafting Odunze for.
I get it. I get it. Okay. All right. So it's Rome, it's Worthy, it's Pickens, it's Higgins, it's Pittman. And then we get into the next group. This is where it gets really hard for me because I think we are now in a situation where there are a ton of young guys with a lot of promise, right? I see names as you're scrolling. There's Jordan Addison, there's Zay Flowers, Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Watson, Jalen Reed, Smith and Jigba, right? There's a bunch of those guys. All of them to me are guys that are kind of still sitting on the promise and not necessarily on production, right? Some of them are rookies, but some of them are, in year 2 or 3 and just really haven't gotten to that next step yet. Then there's the guys like Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin. How do we decide? Because we only have, right, we're at 22. We only have 10 spots left. How do you make that decision between some of these young guys and some of these vets that are going to, and obviously it's situation, it's how your team is developing and what you want to do with it. But we're here and this is the first player we're taking. So we have to decide if it's going to be Amari Cooper or if it's going to be Zay Flowers. He's 30. So it's definitely not Amari Cooper from my perspective, but go ahead.
Okay.
You were about to go on a monologue and I just crushed it. I'm sorry, dude.
Once you start standing on promise instead of production, I don't know, man. I think I might start putting the productive guys atop this list here because I think there's still questions about the other guys.
And Ricky. And
your boy Ricky.
Open up Zay Flowers.
Where's Zay Flowers? Am I going up? Am I going up or down? There he is.
Yeah, he's right there. Yep. So 75.6 as a rookie. I think in terms of production as a young guy, he's probably the best of the guys that haven't been talked about yet as the young guys in terms of just production. And then you even mentioned it. Like, is somebody screaming at us about Brian Thomas Jr.? Is somebody screaming? Am I screaming at you about a
riverboat gambler? Maybe.
Is somebody screaming at you about what's his name on the Packers?
It's Tyreek Hill. Forget before anything else. It's Tyreek Hill. It's Tyreek Hill.
Is it? Yeah.
You want to talk about no sign of slowing down? I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
Would you take him above Pittman?
He was the number 1 receiver in the league last year. Yes, I would take him above Pittman.
Would you take him above Higgins?
Yes.
Would you take him above Pickens?
Yeah, but I'm not the guy. I get why I would rank Higgins where we rank him, but Pickens does not make me comfortable. I would not. I would go elsewhere before I draft Pickens. Like that's the guy I would just. All right, what safeties are out there?
I think I'm slotting him at 20. Tyreek Hill is going to be 20. It's going to be right behind the tier of Nico Collins, DK Metcalf, Rome, and Worthy. To me, those are young guys that have a ton of promise that I want to bet in over taking a guy that's 10 or 11 years older than them.
Yeah.
I agree that he's probably the pick above Pittman because Pittman's only like 3 years younger than him anyway. T. Higgins is never going to get to that tier in my mind where he's that elite level receiver. So I'd rather have 2 years of elite Tyreek Hill than maybe 5 years of good Higgins. And I think the same is true for Pickens, except for, like you said, Pickens might be in a situation where there's years where he's like just striking football and doesn't want to play or something, right? Like, and I just don't want to get in that situation with him. So I'm fine with that. I think Hill's 20, Pickens is 21, Higgins is 22, Pittman Jr. is 23. I would say I don't think Diggs, Adams, Cooper, Cooper Kupp are in the conversation for me over some of the young guys, Terry McLaurin might be, because he is
McLaurin
still
above them
28.
too. And by the way, that yards per route run number is absurd for Tyreek Hill. My freaking goodness.
It's
It's
disgusting.
almost a full yard above Jefferson. What are we doing?
Disgusting.
Yeah. I would put McLaurin above him. Yeah. Cause like I said, it's like, okay, he's like uncertainty at quarterback, whatever. He had Sam Howell.
Mm-hmm. So
now he's got Daniels.
Like, I think next, in my opinion, I don't think it's Diggs or Adams or Cooper. I think it's Addison or Flowers. Or there's a couple guys I want to say their name, but you're going to make fun of me. But
no,
I feel like I should do it.
I'm probably thinking them.
You're probably not. I think Romeo Dobbs starts to enter the conversation.
Okay, no, who else?
He's 24. He's been outstanding.
He's just like all the other Packers receivers. There's just a bunch of number twos that
right.
love to
As
throw
long
into
as he's on the
week.
Packers for the next 5 years, he's probably going to be really good.
Sure. I always told you to put your faith in LaFleur.
I think it's probably, in my mind, it would be Addison over Flowers, but I could see an argument for either of them.
I would put Flowers over Addison.
Let's do that. I think from a production as a rookie,
that was easy to convince you. Yeah.
Because I think when you look at the numbers as rookies, it was that, right? So
and quarterback.
Yeah.
Don't me. We're talking about Lamar Jackson versus JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold.
Yeah, so like 1,000%, yes. And he's also the number one receiver, probably, Flowers.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless the whole fumble fiasco broke him.
Mm-hmm.
What if we're looking back 3 years from now and that's a thing? Like, oh, remember when like we thought he was going to be so good and then that one fumble changed his whole career?
I mean, it kind of might.
I mean, good. Different episode where we talk about the mental toughness and
right. Brian Thomas Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ricky Pearsall, or Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper.
Pearsall is at the bottom of all of those names.
Stop that. No way.
Yes.
Come on.
He doesn't have a path to a game-breaking role yet.
He will in 6 months.
Maybe.
And we just talked about how that doesn't matter for Rome.
He'll already be 24. He's already going to be older than like half the names we've already discussed, and he hasn't played a snap yet.
Okay, I'm going to take a breath. We'll talk about somebody else, and then we'll come back to
that. That your anger was not helpful to the viewer there, to the listener.
Right.
But yeah.
I think I'm going Brian.
Are we splitting hairs?
Yeah, of course we are. I mean, we have to. We have to get to 32, and we're at 27.
Okay.
So I think I would vote Brian Thomas Jr. over everybody else, I think.
Here's why. I was not that I was hoping that you wouldn't, but if you hadn't, I was going to make the case for that, being that Brian Thomas Jr., primarily a deep threat. And when you look at Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback, he hasn't really had that player yet in Jacksonville. And he's a top 5 graded deep passer in the NFL of passes beyond 20 plus yards in the air. He's 5th overall in overall grading, and he has not had a weapon to complement him downfield like that yet. So he meshes perfectly with Brian Thomas Jr. So the fit is great for all of the warts or the incompleteness to Thomas's game that need to be rounded out. He's a perfect fit for what they're looking for to help Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So let's do that. I mean, I really, after that, it's like, and I forgot a couple names, right? Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey, like there are other guys.
Next tier. McConkey maybe might be in this tier. I put Coleman in the next tier.
Okay. But I think that it's probably Devontae Adams next, because you talk about guys not slowing down, and if you want to pull up his card, he really hasn't.
No, he hasn't. But is he? I don't know. If they're 3-7, and his hammy just he has a little tweak or something in his hip or his calf, or is he just out the rest of the year because why bother? He's not going to put himself through the meat grinder for Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew or something.
Yeah. See, like you told me that, Ricky Pearsall is at the bottom of this tier. right? And Ladd, right? Those guys. But if you're really asking me who I would take, I'm probably not taking a 31-year-old receiver over a really promising either end of the first or early second round pick wide receiver.
But so here's my counter to that, though. There's a Ricky Pearsall in every draft, in every rookie draft. There's going to be a Ricky Pearsall next year, and he might not be 24 years old. At that point, so why not?
Drafted by the 49ers in a Shanahan offense?
He's like the wide receiver 4.5 right now with like Jacob Coing.
Stop. Okay, go ahead. Finish your point.
So, I mean, you could just get the next Ricky Pearsall next year and enjoy Devontae Adams this year, because you're not going to have to use a first-round draft pick in your All-22 rookie draft on whoever next year's Ricky Pearsall is.
Mm-hmm.
So why not take the veteran now who's going to grade better, and then just take Ricky Pearsall next year? Like, we got Ricky Pearsall at home. You know, we don't need to buy it at the store.
What about, okay, so I guess if we're going to, let's have that conversation. Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, or Stephon Diggs?
I think Diggs number one in that situation. I think Cooper too, but that's a little bit dependent on Watson's health. I mean, Cooper ended the year on a freaking tear.
Yeah.
He ended the year on a tear, and now he's got Watson presumably back healthy. They got Judy there as well. You got the Bama boys at receiver. I think Cooper's got another year in him.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. So it's Diggs, Cooper, Adams, and we're at 31 and 32. The reason this gets even harder now is because it's like,
who are we about to leave off?
Right. Who's just not making the list? And we didn't mention Cooper Kupp yet. And are we just thinking he's done because he had one injury? Open up his guard.
He's had more than one injury.
I know, but like
his knee before this.
I'm just saying, it's like, no, he's going to be down, I think.
Yeah. So, but does the same strategy apply then, where just the same way you draft Devontae Adams? I don't know, man. The same way you draft Devontae Adams and then just take Ricky Pearsall next year, whoever that is, you do the same with Cooper Kupp.
Before we have this conversation, are you a Jackson Smith and Jigba believer? Because we didn't talk about him yet.
Yes, but until he does it, there's enough young wide receiver talent coming into the league every single year nowadays that I'm not going to draft and wait for Tyler Lockett to go out of there and then hope that when Njigba steps up that there's stability at quarterback and they're not trying to transition from Geno Smith, which has been rumored for like the past, I think the last two drafts, when it comes to them possibly eyeing a quarterback. There's some uncertainty there where I'm not sure the timing is going to line up. It's kind of like, the old cliche, like, oh yeah, it was always kind of into, but the timing was never right. Like, is Njigba going to be that kind of guy where like the timing isn't going to be right? And then you look up and he's going to be 27 years old and he still just kind of had a bunch of wide receiver 26 type of seasons. And, you can't do much with that.
So I think if it was me voting now, it would be the last two spots would be given to McConkey and Ricky Pearsall. Saying that, George Pickens was seen as this secondary receiver option. He had the personality concerns, but all he's done so far has been a really impressive receiver on the football field.
Mm-hmm.
Adonai Mitchell sounds really similar to that. And we put Pickens at 21.
Yeah, but he hasn't done it yet.
He hasn't. But are we just assuming he's not going to be as good as a Ladd? And even though when we watched when we did our pre-draft rankings, Adonai Mitchell was up there for us.
I'm sorry. Why are we not talking about Mike Evans? Is it just because he looks like his hamstring is hurt every time he's running?
That's a good point, dude. I just didn't. You're holding the list. You should have brought him up. He's above all of those old receivers, in my opinion. He's probably 28.
So who would be 29 if we put him at 28?
Diggs.
Am I crazy for thinking?
For me, it's Evan above Diggs. And especially because Diggs has had some personality stuff. Evans is like a saint in that organization.
Yeah, just, yeah. Okay, so I would put Evans above him. I think it's closer than you are kind of framing it, but yes,
No, it is.
how
It
you wanna
definitely
put
is.
this, yeah.
It's definitely closer than that. But I would just feel way more comfortable for all of the reasons we talked about with personality issues and guy just saying like, I'm going to hang it up.
Yeah.
Diggs could do that. His deal's only a 1-year deal. He's a free agent. It's not like he'd be tied and stuck there if he just decided week 6, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Let's put first ballot Hall of Famer Mike Evans there. I agree.
Okay.
So now we got one spot left.
We literally have one spot, and there's
who's battling
14 to 15 guys that I could argue for this spot. The argument is all right. So it's Cooper Kupp, it's Christian Watson, it's Jayden Reed, it's Jamison Williams, it's Calvin Ridley, it's Ricky Pearsall, it's Xavier Legette, it's Keon Coleman, it's Ladd McConkey, it's Curtis Samuel this year could be pretty freaking cool.
I've been saying that for 4 years, and he's always like just kind of not really let me.
Adonai Mitchell. We basically just wrote off Rashee Rice.
I think
whatever. That's probably fine.
You can't trust that guy.
I mean, Mike Williams on the Jets this year.
No.
Josh Downs.
Chris Godwin is Mr. Consistent. Just throwing that out there.
Chris Godwin.
Like he's another one, like a little bit younger than some of the older guys we've been mentioning, but not quite good enough to necessarily be placed above them. So how does that factor in versus these young guys?
Shoot.
He's going to play much more in the slot this year, which is what he does best.
I probably think there's an argument for him versus Terry. And we put Terry at 24. They're the same age.
Yeah, but I think Terry's more of a game breaker. And that gives you that upset. Like Terry McLaurin could win you a week in all 20. Sure. But Terry McLaurin could win you a week when he plays the LA Rams. Is Godwin going to win you any weeks, or is he just going to consistently just hit a bunch of singles, which is great. You want to hit those singles. I guess when he plays the Packers, he'll win you your week, as a matter of fact. I feel like there's more game breaking ability there with McLaurin than there is for Godwin. And that might just be a feel thing. It might be a feel thing, but I think we've seen that more with McLaurin than Godwin.
And the conversation again, like I think you and I have differed on this, just at least in this conversation, is I'm drafting Ladd McConkey and Ricky Pearsall over 28, 29, 30, and 31 currently on our list. But saying that, I also would think we would get, like, there might be threats against our lives if we left Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, and Devontae Adams off our list.
Well, so if I could maybe do a tiebreaker, so I would likely draft McConkey over those guys. I don't think I would draft Pearsall over those guys because at that point, similar to what you said about, I would target other positions once this tier of receiver is gone, and that's kind of how you broke up your tiers. I would draft McConkey over some of those older names, but not Ricky Pearsall, because the draft strategy for me would then become, I could just get next year's Ricky Pearsall. So let me go ahead and nab Cooper and get really good production for this 1 year and then go from there. I think McConkey's a little bit different, at least in my eyes, from Pearsall in that regard, because I think McConkey is set to have a big role right out of the gate in year one, and it fits him really darn well. So I think he's gonna get some high grading right out the gate.
I think that's fine. So
I think he gets the spot. So
like I'll as the Packer fan, I'll do the argument against Jayden Reed just because there might be people at home being like, why are you not talking about him? He had a 75.1 grade as a rookie. He was an older rookie, but he played really well. I talk about this before. I'll talk about it again. I want a receiver that can get open on his own and not need scheming. I think that a lot of Jayden Reed's production was due to LaFleur, not Jayden Reed, right? It was him planning plays that got him really open. Yes, Reed executed it extremely well, which is why his grading is really high. But to me, I think Ladd McConkey, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think Ricky Pearsall are guys that can do a lot more than that. Even Romeo Dobbs, like I would have more of an argument to saying Romeo Dobbs is the guy over Jayden Reed, because I think Dobbs can create for himself. But if we want to tiebreaker it and just say we think Ladd is in the best position to be successful, I'm totally fine with that. There really is not a lot of competition there for him. I think the only thing that still makes me nervous is like, why wasn't he the number one receiver in college? Why was Bowers that guy? Can he do that on his own in the NFL? Can we just expect him to be the guy in the NFL on a team that doesn't really have a number one receiving weapon, right? Like that does worry me a little bit, where he's going to go to the Chargers. Justin Herbert throws for 4,000 yards every single year of his career. I have no idea where those targets are going to go.
They got to go somewhere.
But I would be disappointed. But what I could also see happening is Ladd ends up with 60 receptions for 600 yards. And we're just like, hey, he was good, but he's just not that receiver that's going to just be game breaking. I don't know. That's my worry. Saying that, it's still probably, you pulled up Keenan Allen. You're just adding.
Well, just to show that I think he's just a touch too old. He's already 32. I think he's got 1 year left, if that. And given that there's other weapons, I'm not sure he's going to be peppered with the same amount of targets that he was originally. So I'm pulling him up just because, hey, let's talk about him a little bit. But I don't think I'd put him above the other names here.
Okay.
He's just a touch old.
I think we wrap it up. We plug in Ladd. Ladd is going to be receiver 32, and we're happy about it. Like yes. It's a good ranking, and it's pretty promising that he made this list. There was a lot of names.
It's very hard to do.
I think 32. We could have got to 50.
Oh,
I'm glad we didn't, because we're at an hour and 21 minutes, but we could have got to 50.
Yeah, we could easily have gotten to 50. The receiver is just so deep. There's names here. You just scrolled through this list here that could absolutely just break out. I mean, names that aren't being talked about, like Jerry Jeudy's a punchline. Okay, but what if he now that he's got Deshaun and there's another weapon?
You had me for a second. You could have done.
You knew I was going to do that.
You could have done Christian or Johnson, and I would have
Christian Kirk. I was going to say Johnson. In all honesty, Johnson was going to be the first name, but I knew I'd get a reaction out of you if I started with Jerry Jeudy. Yeah. But Deontay Johnson with someone like Bryce Young and an improved offensive line, like that's one that could be a breakout guy and someone that isn't being talked about that should be and can be a really productive player for you this year. In any format or platform. Jahan Dotson, 1 down year, we're going to go ahead and just forget he exists. I'm not a Jamison Williams guy, but that's a name. There's a lot of talk recently about the whole Christian Watson thing and kind of the imbalances with the injuries that he suffered and kind of figuring that out and working through some things that presumably moving forward will prevent him from those type of nagging soft tissue injuries again, because when healthy, he can be extremely productive. So there's names here that we didn't discuss that are outside of the top 32 that can blow up and just have big years. And there's going to be names from this list that do just that. And then we sit here going, why didn't we talk about them more? Well, it's because there's a ton of other names to get to, and you just can't get to them all. Yeah. Receiver is just such a deep position in the NFL. And, that's just kind of how it is these days. So it's a very deep position. I think you touched on it. And look at this, like Tank Dell is another one. So yeah, you touched on it. It's such a deep position. You can go 50 deep if you wanted to. And all of these guys can be contributing productive players for a winning franchise in all 22 and in the NFL. You can talk about our sleeper of the year, Rashid Shaheed. So that's just, again, we could go on forever. So lots of names here. It's very difficult to narrow it down to 32. I think we did a good job. Again, this is all
really have an 83.4 grade as a rookie.
Who? Yeah.
Tank
yeah,
Dell?
he absolutely did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be easily on my list. And I said that earlier on that I think he's, more.
But he had you do have to see him come back from the injury. I mean, let's not just, if I see someone break their leg in front of me, I want to see. I mean, Tony Pollard was like the top graded running back at the end of 2022 to close out the year, broke his leg or broke his ankle, came back and just kind of wasn't the same guy for most of the year. it takes some time no matter what. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to argue about Tank Dell, I'm just saying let's just see it a little bit. But I agree. I think by week 3 we could be like, oh yeah, he's easily top 22-ish
right
in the league. So that's
well, maybe we will do a top 50 at some point and have Dell. And I think Johnson was a miss. I think we should have talked about him on this list. I think especially now being like Bryce Young's number 1 target, probably he might do really well there. But all right, let's wrap it up. Everybody, thank you for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter at all22_PFF.
Okay.
And if you haven't yet, please give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, and have a great rest of your day.
Go.